The quiet morning of June 10th, 1912, in the small town of Villisca, Iowa, did not begin with the usual bustle of waking streets, but with an ominous, unnatural silence that seemed palpable. The sun slowly rose above the horizon, illuminating neat wooden houses, but the Moore family's homestead remained immersed in a deep tranquility, which soon turned into chilling horror. Neighbor Mary Peckham, accustomed to seeing the head of the family, Josiah Moore, at work by 7 in the morning, anxiously noted that the house was suspiciously silent. The chickens had not been fed, the cows in the barn expressed uneasiness, and the curtains on the windows remained tightly drawn, as if protecting the inhabitants from the outside world. This silence was the first harbinger that the usual order of things in this peaceful corner of America had forever passed into oblivion, giving way to a mystery that would not be solved for more than a century. When Josiah's brother, Ross Moore, opened the front door with his key, the heavy, stale air of the house met him with a frightening absence of signs of life. Upon entering the first bedroom on the ground floor, he discovered something that made him freeze in place. The family's 2 young guests, the Stillinger sisters, lay in their beds, but their earthly journey had ended in the harshest possible way. This was only the beginning of a long and agonizing journey into the darkness hidden within the walls of this house. It soon became clear that the entire family of 6 and 2 invited children had been attacked during the hours when the town slept, unaware of the presence of a shadow gliding through the corridors. The strangest and most terrifying circumstance was that all the mirrors in the house were carefully covered with clothes or pieces of fabric, and the windows were draped with sheets, as if the perpetrator did not want to see his own reflection, or feared that the faces of the victims would haunt him from the depths of the glass. To understand the scale of what happened, one must transport oneself to the atmosphere of Villisca in the early 20th century. It was a thriving railroad hub where everyone knew each other by name, and house doors were rarely locked. Josiah Moore was considered one of the town's most successful businessmen, a respected citizen and a loving father of 4 children. His wife, Sarah, was a pillar of the local Presbyterian church. The evening of June 9th passed in a festive atmosphere. Children's Day was celebrated at the church, and the Moore family, along with their guests, sisters Lena and Gertie Stillinger, participated in the festivities until late. They returned home in the warm rain, sharing impressions of the performances and songs, unaware that they were being watched from the thick shadows of the trees. Villisca at that time presented an ideal picture of the American dream, where hard work was rewarded and faith united people. But it was this idyll that became the backdrop for an encounter with a primal, inexplicable evil. The prerequisites for the tragedy were rooted in the social and business structure of the town. Despite external prosperity, conflicts simmered within the community, fueled by competition and personal ambitions. Josiah Moore began his career at the company of another influential man, Frank Jones, who owned an agricultural machinery store. Over time, Moore decided to open his own business, taking with him some clients and profitable contracts. This led to a protracted feud between the 2 community leaders. In a small town where reputation was more precious than gold, such a schism created tension that many would later call a possible motive for settling scores. Thus, the external calm of Villisca was merely a thin sheet of ice over a deep lake of discontent and hidden grievances, waiting for the moment to surface. The visible conflict of those days unfolded on the plane of the struggle for power and influence in the state of Iowa. Frank Jones was not just a merchant. He was a state senator and possessed enormous connections. When the investigation began, it immediately encountered political obstacles. The first hours after the discovery of the incident were marked by chaos. Hundreds of curious townspeople literally trampled the crime scene, destroying evidence that could shed light on the identity of the night visitor. County authorities were unprepared for a crime of such magnitude. The lack of a professional approach to forensics at that time allowed many important details to disappear without a trace. Political pressure and attempts to protect the interests of influential individuals created a veil through which honest justice found it difficult to penetrate. Inside the house itself, a drama unfolded, the details of which the investigation painstakingly pieced together. The tool found in the room belonged to Josiah himself, but it had been used with such methodical precision and cold calculation that it ruled out a spontaneous fit of rage. The night visitor, it seems, spent several hours in the attic, waiting for the family to return and fall asleep. This waiting in the dark, among old things and the smell of dust, indicates incredible composure. The psychological profile of the person who committed such an act pointed to deep internal contradictions and, possibly, religious obsession. The ritual of closing the mirrors and leaving untouched food on the table suggested that for the perpetrator, this act had some sacred or symbolic meaning, going beyond the simple elimination of rivals. On an ideological level, this event became a clash of old America, founded on trust and community, with a new reality where threat could come from nowhere and have no rational explanation. The paradox was that Villisca, striving for progress and civilization, suddenly found itself in the grip of superstition and fear of the man from the shadows. It was a collapse of faith in the sanctity of the home. People wondered, if even the most respected and devout family is not safe in their own home, then who can feel secure? The conflict between the logic of the investigation and the irrationality of the crime itself created a vacuum that was filled with rumors and suspicions, destroying the town from within more effectively than the incident itself. The complexity of the situation was exacerbated by the presence of several extremely controversial figures in the case. One of them was Reverend Lynn George Jacqueline Kelly, a traveling preacher whose behavior caused bewilderment in those around him. He was present at that very church festival and left town early in the morning on the day the tragedy was discovered. Kelly was known for his exalted sermons and strange interest in the details of the crime, which he recounted to train passengers even before the news became public. His personality became the embodiment of the internal conflict between religious zeal and the dark sides of the human psyche. The investigation long struggled to understand whether he was merely a witness with an unstable psyche, or the actual perpetrator who believed his actions were the fulfillment of a higher will. The personal ambitions of the detectives also contributed to the confusion of the case. James Newton Wilkerson, a private investigator from a well-known agency, spent years trying to prove Senator Frank Jones's guilt. He built a complex logical chain, according to which Jones hired a professional hitman named William Mansfield to eliminate Moore. Wilkerson turned this investigation into a personal crusade, dividing the town's residents into two camps. This confrontation fractured communities, families, and friendships. Wilkerson's internal struggle for justice often bordered on obsession, leading many to doubt the objectivity of his conclusions. But his persistence kept the case from being filed away for decades. The philosophical subtext of the Villisca case lies in the question of the nature of evil. If it was a contract killing, then why were strange rituals with mirrors necessary? If it was an act of madness, then how to explain the strategic precision and the ability to remain invisible in a small town? In this case, two value systems clashed: the pragmatism of political struggle and the chaos of the uncontrolled subconscious. The tragedy showed that the human soul is capable of actions that do not fit into any of the existing legal or moral systems of that time. It was a challenge to the very understanding of humanity, thrown into the heart of a peaceful rural area. The turning point in this story came in 1917, when Reverend Kelly was officially taken into custody and brought to trial. His confession, obtained during hours of interrogation, seemed to put an end to this protracted drama. He described visions and voices that guided him that night. However, at the trial, the situation changed dramatically. The defense managed to prove that the confession was obtained under immense psychological pressure, and Kelly himself was in a state that did not allow him to fully comprehend his words. The jury faced a dilemma: to send to the dock a man whose guilt seemed obvious due to his eccentricities, or to admit that there was no direct evidence of his presence in the Moore house. This trial became the culmination of the entire story. The entire state held its breath following the proceedings. In the courtroom, the interests of politics, religion, and personal dramas converged. The prosecution tried to present Kelly as a calculating monster hiding behind the mask of a preacher, while the defense painted a picture of an unfortunate, mentally ill man who became a scapegoat for a system that failed to find the real culprit. In the end, the first trial ended with a division of opinions among the jurors. 11 people voted for acquittal and only 1 for conviction. The second trial fully acquitted the Reverend, leaving the town and the entire country in a state of deep disappointment and uncertainty. All the streams of suspicion that had led to different people over the years eventually converged at one point into emptiness. The transformation of the perception of this event also occurred at a deeper social level. Villisca ceased to be a symbol of security. Residents began to install bars on windows, buy locks, and look with suspicion at every stranger passing by. That very man from the shadows became an archetype, a terrifying legend that reminded them that evil does not always have a face and a name. The naive confidence that a virtuous life guarantees protection from misfortune disappeared. It was a painful transition to the modern world, where the anonymity of the city and the mobility of people on trains created new opportunities for those who wished to remain undiscovered. The resonance of this story is still felt today, more than 114 years later. The tragedy in Villisca became one of the most famous cold cases in world history, spawning countless theories, books, and documentaries. It teaches us that justice is a fragile instrument that easily breaks under the weight of political interests or incompetence. We see how mistakes made in the first hours after the incident can lead to the truth remaining hidden forever. In the era of modern technology and genetic expertise, the Villisca case seems unthinkable, but it was precisely it that laid the foundations for the development of professional forensics and the understanding of the importance of preserving the crime scene in its pristine form. The lessons of this case extend far beyond jurisprudence. It is a reminder of the importance of maintaining humanity and objectivity even in moments of the deepest grief and mass hysteria. The search for a culprit at any cost often leads to the suffering of the innocent, while the true source of darkness remains safe. Villisca's story is a mirror we are afraid to look into, because we fear seeing in it the reflection of our own vulnerability in the face of the inexplicable. For modern society, accustomed to instant answers and quick information, this case serves as a reminder of the existence of mysteries that defy logical analysis and demand humility in the face of the unknowable. Interest in the Moore family home does not wane, and today it stands as a monument to that era and those events. People from all over the world come there not out of idle curiosity, but in an attempt to connect with a story that never received a finale. This place has become a symbol of time standing still. Inside, everything is preserved as it was on that fateful night. Old furniture, narrow stairs, a silence that still seems filled with whispers of the past. This makes one reflect on the value of every human life and on the deep imprint left by every decision, made or not made, at a critical moment. Returning to that quiet morning in June 1912, we again see Mary Peckham standing on the porch and looking at the tightly drawn curtains of her neighbor's house. That moment of uncertainty, when an ordinary day has not yet turned into a nightmare, is key. We all live in this fragile reality, where the line between calm and chaos can be erased by a single movement of shadow. The ritual with the covered mirrors remains the most mysterious detail of this story. Perhaps whoever did it wanted time to stop, for the reflection of the familiar world to disappear forever, leaving only an eternal, unanswered question. The crime in Villisca is not just a page in the history of criminology, it is a deep philosophical reflection on the limits of human knowledge. We can collect thousands of pieces of evidence, interview hundreds of witnesses, and construct dozens of logical models, but there always remains an element that eludes our understanding. That man from the shadows has become part of the collective unconscious, reminding us that behind the facade of any well-being, forces we cannot control may be hidden. And as long as the mirrors in that house remain covered in our memory, we will continue to search for the truth, hoping that one day light will be shed on the darkest corners of this story. The events of those days also highlighted the role of chance and fate. If the Stillinger sisters had not stayed over, if the rain had not made the family return home faster, if even one door had been locked a little more securely, the whole story could have gone differently. But history knows no subjunctive mood. It leaves us only facts and room for reflection. We see how a small decision, to invite children for a sleepover, turned into an unspeakable loss. This emphasizes the fragility of our plans in the face of unforeseen circumstances. This is the true drama of life. We build cities, create laws, believe in justice, but we must always remember that beyond the illuminated circle of our knowledge begins the territory of the unknown. Concluding this journey following the events in Villisca, we realize that the true meaning of this mystery lies not in the name of the perpetrator, which may never be named with absolute certainty. The meaning lies in how this tragedy revealed the best and worst traits of human nature. The dedication of Detective Wilkerson, the resilience of the townspeople, their striving for truth, and, at the same time, their fears and prejudices. This is a story about finding meaning in chaos, and about the importance of not letting darkness consume our striving for light and understanding. The house in Villisca remains a silent guardian of the past, holding within its walls a secret that continues to stir minds and hearts, compelling us again and again to peer into the darkness in search of answers. Each generation finds something of its own in this story. For some, it's a classic detective novel. For others, a psychological thriller. For still others, a profound social drama about changes in American society. But for all of us, it is first and foremost a reminder that behind every dry fact of history stands a living person, their dreams, their fears, and their right for their story to be told honestly. The tragedy of the Moore family and the Stillinger sisters is a call to vigilance, to compassion, and to the tireless pursuit of truth, no matter how complex and frightening it may seem. And in this endless chase for elucidation, we ourselves change, becoming more conscious and attentive to the world around us. Thus, events from 114 years ago continue to live in our present. They are woven into the fabric of culture, They are discussed in modern auditoriums and on internet forums. This continuous movement of thought and analysis testifies to the fact that some events possess such energy that it does not fade with time. We continue to ask questions, build theories, and search for that very __0_understanding that the pursuit of truth is our way of honoring the memory of those whose lives were so suddenly and unjustly cut short on that distant June morning. And as long as we remember, as long as we search, they are not forgotten, and their story continues to serve as a lesson for all of us. Ultimately, Villisca has become a metaphor for the human experience, where light and shadow coexist in an inseparable unity. We learn to see beyond external manifestations the deep currents that govern people's actions and the course of history. This realization makes us wiser, though it strips us of some illusions. But this is precisely the path to true maturity, in the ability to face the truth, even if it is hidden behind the thick curtains of an old house or behind the veil of decades. We conclude this narrative where we began, in the silence of a waking town, hoping that someday this silence will bring not horror, but long-awaited peace and ultimate clarity. The Moore family and their guests became unwitting participants in a great drama that extended far beyond their modest existence. Their names are inscribed in history not because of their achievements, but because of the ordeal that befell them. This reminds us that every person is part of something larger, and our common task is to ensure that similar pages of history are never repeated. Villisca remains a place of pilgrimage for those seeking answers to the eternal questions of life, the finitude of existence, and justice. And as long as that house stands, as long as people remember the events of June 10, 1912, the search for truth will continue, transcending time and space in the pursuit of light. The world of Villisca today is the calm, measured rhythm of modern Iowa, but the shadow of that incident still falls upon its streets. It serves as a warning and a reminder that safety is not the absence of threats, but our readiness to confront them with an open heart and a clear mind. We close this page, but the book of history remains open, inviting us to new explorations and reflections. May the memory of those who suffered inspire us to create a world where truth always comes to light, and mirrors will never again have to be covered with cloth to hide pain and fear of one's own reflection. This story, which began with silence, ends with our voice, which carries it forward. We are the keepers of this memory, and it is up to us what lessons we draw from the events of 100 years ago. May our striving for understanding be stronger than any fear, and may our respect for the past help us build a safer and more just future. Villisca will forever remain in our hearts, as a symbol that even the deepest mystery cannot be completely forgotten, as long as there are those who are willing to seek the truth and believe in the power of the human spirit.